All right, so hi everyone. I'd like to welcome you to this afternoon's web event, Outdoor Learning in Winter with Pamela Gibson. So despite the freezing cold weather, I know here in Quebec City it's really cold. I'd like to give a warm welcome to Pamela. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon with the other teachers. Pamela is a career classroom teacher with an arts background, and she has a love for teaching and learning outdoors. She currently works for Learning for a Sustainable Future, which is a non-for-profit in Ontario. She's a lead facilitator and also a lead in implementing the Sustainable Future Schools project. I've attended one of her sessions and was so inspired, so I'm actually really thrilled that she had time and was available to come share her knowledge and experience with us. Without further ado, I will pass the mic to Pamela. If ever you have any questions too, feel free to write them in the chat. We're going to keep note of the questions. And after Pamela's presentation, we'll have a question and discussion period. Enjoy.
Thanks very much, Carolyn. And I'm very glad to be here and glad that you're all able to join in as we talk about the possibilities of learning outdoors in winter. This is an auspicious day, perhaps you know that from the calendar. In the next 2 days, we're going to celebrate the midpoint of winter. It's definitely on the slide down here, as well as Groundhog Day, as well as Candlemas, all kinds of things and ways that ancient peoples honored this particular time. So it is auspicious. Here where I am in Ontario, north of Toronto, it's 0 out, and today I saw my first snow flea, which is always a clear sign of spring sort of coming around, although we're going to have brutal weather again tomorrow. And also heard a great horned owl, and they're mating right now. Squirrels are chasing each other like crazy. And also I heard a chickadee with this "Hey, sweetie," which is its mating call. Now it was very quiet, but nonetheless, it was there. So, you know, spring is coming. Take heart. So as Carolyn said, I have been a K-8 classroom teacher, as well as dabbling in 9 and 10. And what she didn't say is I'm always ready to channel my 6-year-old self. And that's, you know, that's a boon when you're teaching, right? And everything you see and hear about today is from my practice. It's not internet stuff. They're all pictures from the school that I spend most of my time at. And I've been doing this since I don't want to tell you when, and it's all doable and effective and a wonderful way of being with kids. Before we get started, I would like to mention 4 questions that Marie Sinclair from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission asks us to consider as healing questions. Where did I come from? Where am I going? Why am I here? And those are important questions for all of us, Indigenous or not, so that we have common ground and so that we understand the out of doors, the geology, the waters, the plants, the air, the animals, and the ancestors, and the concept of doing no harm and doing good. And in that spirit of truth and respect, peoples these lands for thousands of years. We're going to begin, as I always begin, and LSF always begins, with looking at the Sustainable Development Goals. Oftentimes when people look at these 17 goals, they think that most of them speak to the environment, but it's not exactly the case. And a lot of it is about the people. And the SDGs provide a blueprint for peace and prosperity for we as people and the planet now and into the future. And what I'm inviting you to do is to consider filtering everything you do, weaving it through the lens of sustainability. It is the big one, and it is something for us all to consider and to look at these 17 goals and to have them up and to speak about them in our classes and to relate them to everything we do. There's a lot of definitions of sustainability, but I've highlighted a couple there. You are not helping the planet. You're not helping nature. You are the planet. You are nature. You are helping yourself. That's kind of interesting. Or how about to take only what we need, to use it well, to be grateful, and to reciprocate the gift, a give and take with the land, and a practice of reciprocity. And we're going to hear from a book that Robin Wall Kimmerer has written, though she's written many in a bit. But also Arjen Vols, who I have met and is an awesome guy. And he says it's not only about doing things better, it's about doing better things. And I think that speaks to us as educators. At LSF, our response to teaching sustainably and teaching about sustainability has been to create this framework for educators, maybe explain why sometimes our success has been minimal. Oftentimes we want to go right to the understanding with kids, and we forget that sometimes they don't know exactly who they are or what they're doing and their relationship to the land or to each other or to the world in general. And we need to make sure that we glue them nicely to that out of doors piece, and then they'll know why and they'll care. And when they care about each other and they care about the world, then the understanding is much easier to convey. And of course, that action piece where they want to be part of making things better, and kids do want to help. So I'm going to call this a tasting menu about the out of doors, a 45-minute shallow dive into what you can do. I hope not to become a motor mouth because there's so much to say. So if you need to dial out for a minute, that's fine, and take a breather. But we're going to look at all of these things, finishing off and also thinking about how you connect all this stuff to your curriculum. And importantly, as I said before, how the SDGs can be woven throughout your practice. Well, if you look at all of these ideas, I want you to look at all of them through a number of lenses. Yes, the curriculum, but the curriculum tells you what to teach, but I want you to consider here the how and the where. And also through the lens of sustainability, woven through everything, as we just said, but also community involvement and student connection, that being outside and seeing where they are and how they fit into their communities. That brings student well-being and empowerment, a very important piece that we've been talking about lately. And connection to nature in winter is part of that. It's character building. We talk about responsibility. We talk about resilience and grit and confidence. And I would suggest that being outside is a wonderful place to start to help kids to connect to those things. It also fosters awareness, that be there, care, do, and understand, as the model says, and two-eyed seeing. And I'd like to read from a book called Gathering Moss by Robin Wall Kimmerer about this 2 ways of knowing. In Indigenous ways of knowing, we say that a thing cannot be understood until it is known by all 4 aspects of our being: mind, body, emotion, and spirit. The scientific way of knowing relies only on empirical information from the world, gathered by the body and interpreted by the mind. But in order to tell our stories, we need both approaches, objective and subjective. We give voice to the ways of knowing, to both ways of knowing, letting matter and spirit walk companionably side by side, and sometimes even dance. And as an arts person, I love that idea. So the first thing we're going to do collectively together, and I say together because I'm going to invite you on a visualization. You can close your eyes, or you can stare at a wall, or you can simply find something inner to think about. But I'm going to invite you to think about or visualize in your mind's eye a local green space that you love. And I would like you to start by visualizing that green space in September and October. What is it like? What does it look like? What attracts you there? How does it make you feel? What kinds of activities are you involved in? What are you smelling? What are you seeing? Now let's change our mind's eye to the same space in December and January. What has changed? What do you now see or smell? And how does it make you feel now? And has your activity there changed? Why do you still go there? How about March and April in the spring? And now we can really rely on those smells, can't we? And what we see is very different. I love to call March and April the season of mud. My mother used to hate that season, but I love that season. What's there for you? What's the best part? Now let's take you to the summer, to June and July, maybe into August. What's that space like now? What can you learn from that space? How does that space make you feel? What connects you to that space in all 4 of those seasons? So like a good psychiatrist, I'm going to snap you out of it and ask you, how can you get to know a place without being there regularly? How can you learn about that place without being there 4 seasons? And how can you learn to respect and appreciate and understand the land? See the importance of taking care of it and learning that reciprocity with the land. If you're not out there for regular awareness and learning all year round. And we know about the research. Sustainability begins with place-based education for children. And I love that quote. And I think it's me. You can't fall in love with someone you have never met. At least I don't think so. So let's look at those reasons to stay outside all year round. There are a lot of them. That sense of place we've been talking about, the differences of learning opportunities, that appreciation, all of the abstract concepts like adaptation and sublimation that we can really tap into in winter. But my favorite is it prevents kids from thinking it's only good out there 50 days a year. It prevents us as adults from being those good weather people. We are northern people. Our mental health demands that we get outside and we connect to our out of doors. That's how we create sustainable people. That's how we create sustainable children and adults. So how can we develop that sense of place? Well, we can do it in one sense or one way through ritual, those calendar opportunities. The daily opportunities. What can we do in the morning or in the noon or in the late afternoon on any given day, or weekly, by season, early, middle, late fall, or winter, or all year round? What can we do monthly? What can we revisit for a 10-month period that we're at school? What can we do seasonally? Can we have a fall project every year that morphs into something big, or yearly? And I say down at the bottom that ritual lays down roots. When you look at all these opportunities, I wonder what comes to mind that you've done. What could you do to honor these cycles in your grade, with your curriculum, at your school or job place, that reflects your subjects? So you can use the chat, as Carolyn welcomed you to inspire each other as we go along, because I don't have all the knowledge, but together all of us have lots of knowledge. Well, we can develop a sense of place through natural cycles as well, and we can get to know them. As I said, I'm an arts person. I've never been a particularly strong science person, but I've learned along with the kids, and I've learned for many years by being outside. And we can take advantage of what nature is up to, and we can see those curriculum possibilities. There, I've listed many of them. However, I'd love to draw your attention to moon cycles. Now, it's not something we often teach in school because kids aren't there for moon cycles, but it connects home and school. And it draws our attention to ancient history, to creative writing, to that storytelling piece. I love moon of stories. What is this the moon of? Is this the moon of the big snow? Or is this the moon of hockey for you? Or is this the moon of snowshoeing? Or the moon of that favorite TV series? I don't know, but it makes for darn good storytelling and writing. Those life cycles, the what's going on out here walks in your neighborhood or around your school grounds, or that evidence hunt for species. There's lots of things going on. There's also those 3 season opportunities at school. We're there for the fall, we're there for the winter and the spring. And there's some examples. You know, when you go outside and you start looking at a tree in the fall, and you do that through the different months at school, kids settle down and start to see things as being sort of a bit permanent and interesting, but also changing. So it's a lovely juxtaposition between the two. And there's pictures of the kids at the school where I am, and they're studying all of those things that you see listed, the 5 of those. You see the shadows, you see the bird feeders being raised, you see the kids looking at and monitoring the growth of plants. It's a wonderful opportunity. I did list the backyard bird count, which takes place on February the 18th this year, so you might tap into that. And I think I've got a link to it later on. We talk a lot about character building. There's a few characteristics that we would love to instill in our kids, and we can do that really well outside. There's lots of challenges to be had in the winter. Something as simple as balancing on a log, or those cooperative games. I'm a big champion of cooperative games. It's like, oh my, we're building a team here. We're not pitting one team against another. We're telling them we're all on the same team, and we're looking at helping out with issues and to solving some problems together. What a novel idea, right? And those walks in the deep snow or the mud or through the woods, they're not easy, right? Learning to photograph what we see and see in a different way. You can see pic collage on the right-hand side there that some kindergarten kids did. So there's lots of opportunities that certainly tap into that good health and well-being that we talk so much about. And that's one of the SDGs, and that's a sustainable practice. We want kids to learn to be prepared, to be responsible, to be critical thinkers, and to take action. And we can help them with this if we participate in some of those things. So those longer walks and talking to kids about what do we need to take? What do we need to leave at home and not carry in our backpacks? Maybe an overnight in different years than this one to an outdoor center for those older kids. Having kids create a curricular connected learning activity or game that they can teach others, and revise the game and play it over and over, and critically think about what's good about it, what's not so great about it, etc. Or to solve a local issue, or to teach a target audience in the community what they've learned. I love Speaker's Corner. I love a game or sidewalk chalk, or lots of ways of conveying a message or asking the community members a question and taking an audit. That teamwork, that pulling together, there's those cooperative games again. You're going to see a few of these things a couple of times. I make no apologies for that. Maybe they'll remain in your brain. Winter play days for the whole school. Older kids can create those for younger kids. And working with the community on local initiatives, of which you see a few there from Bell Fountain School, which is the first sustainable future school, of which I am the lead for LSF, in Canada. And they've got all kinds of things going on there, as you can see, with the community. Winter is a wonderful time for understanding abstract concepts, like I said, sublimation and things like that. Critically thinking about things, how they survive. I've highlighted survival because I'm going to show you a very brief video clip of a kindergarten class out on a walk from Bell Fountain School, and they just ran into a bunch of feathers. Now, most adults will go, oh, there's been a death in the family. But these kids aren't exactly sure, because survival and things like life and death take a while to understand. So this is an interesting video clip. I want you to notice that the educator did not tell any of them they were wrong. She just kept asking those questions.
You guys have found a lot of feathers. Where do you think, what animal do you think this is from?
A peacock.
You think a peacock? You think a
turkey.
A turkey? Now, if there's all these feathers here, where is the turkey?
The peacock, you mean?
Or the peacock? Where's the turkey or the peacock if all the feathers are there?
Where
do you think he would?
feathers?
Do you think she would leave them behind?
No.
Any guesses?
When she on her.
When she what?
On her.
She wiggled?
Yeah.
When she wiggled, she got them off?
Yeah.
Any other ideas? Any other ideas? What happened to the peacock or the turkey? Okay, well, let's go back and investigate.
So as you can see, they were struggling with that idea, but the more you take them out and the more they see evidence of all kinds of things, adaptation, survival, predator, prey, it is interesting how quickly they catch on and how quickly they understand the natural evidence of that. Here's another example of tree adaptation when they were looking at conifers right at the beginning of the winter, and they've also been out after that really, really deep snow we had a few weeks ago. I don't know if you did. Certainly, the city of Toronto got dumped on apparently royally. Didn't call in the army. That's a difference. Anyway, no social comment. Sorry. This is kids checking out that weight of the snow, and they're going to go out after every major snowfall and revisit it by measuring, by taking photographs, and seeing how the branches have been adapted to snowfall and maintaining their life in spite of all of that snowfall, and maybe even a strong ice event later in the year. So it's a marvelous way of teaching these things that they're difficult to teach in any other season. Mental health. Whoa, we're all looking after our mental health these days, and mental health and well-being is part of sustainability. We cannot be a sustainable people without taking care of our mental health and well-being. And being outside is a marvelous way of doing it. Just simply enjoying the quiet, if there is a quiet place outside of where you're teaching, especially if you're in the country, but even if you're in the city, recognizing that importance of being outside, how you feel, and talking about feelings. Sit spots, if you're not familiar with them, sometimes they're called spirit spots, where kids find their own spot to sit, and they have a little time alone. There's a difference between being alone and being lonely, and they learn that very quickly. And sometimes you give them something to do, like think about how the snow makes you feel, or take a look at what you're seeing, and we're going to go and do some sketching afterwards. But oftentimes they learn just to sit with their own thoughts or with their own vision. Yoga outside, feeling any other physical activity, feeling at home outside and belonging, and understanding how your body works outside. That appreciation again for the beauty of winter, and noting the buds and the coming spring. Fodder certainly for the arts and for poetry and for creative writing. And connections, as I said before, with community members of all ages, inviting the community to events. Now, hopefully COVID will not last forever, and we will have opportunity to do all kinds of these things together, but I know they're modified for this year. So what are the considerations when you're working outside in the community, whether it's winter or whether it's any other time of year? Well, there's safety considerations, there's habits and routines, there's weather, and there's clothing. That's kind of how I've divided it up for today. And notice I've got sustainable cities and communities, because kids learn to be part of their city and their community, or their village, or wherever they are. And they are bringing with them sustainable practices. So what safety considerations do you have? What are those habits and routines? I'm sure I'm speaking to the converted, and I'm sure I'm singing to the choir, as they say. But just to remind you, we're going to go through a few things. Always be clear on boundaries. Every time you go out, the boundaries should change depending on what you're doing. Even in your own playground, sometimes you're in a small area, sometimes you're in a larger area. When you go off school grounds, you need to be very clear about boundaries. When you're walking together, you need to be clear about how that goes. And signals. Maintain the same signal for gathering, and be clear on a meeting place. Decide together where you're going to be and what those signals are. Those other things are not new to you. We're going to spend a little time on appropriate clothing, but I would say involve your students in the discussion of safety routines, and you will get more buy-in. Also, involve your parents right from the very beginning. because uncomfortable kids equals irritable, sad kids, and nobody wants that. So that weather, well, talk about the weather, and who likes to talk about the weather more than Canadians? But talk about it each time you're outside with kids, and teach kids to pay attention to it, to look around, to find out where the wind's coming from, to see what's happening with the clouds and the light outside, etc. To not only learn about it, but talk about it, to comment on it, to respond to it. And there's some things to consider. But once again, involve your students and decide together the length of time that you'll need outside for the activity that you're going to have. And increase it incrementally as they acclimatize. That's what creates resilience instead of resistance. You can start with 5 minutes. If I were to take a class out for the first time that hadn't been outside for learning, I would basically take them outside the door and talk for 5 minutes about something and with them that they can see and relate to, and take them back in. It would be kind of like that, or take them out for 5 minutes before the bell rings that they're going to be outside for recess, and just keep increasing that time. And choose those times wisely. So if you're being sensitive to the changing weather, you're going to tack on those outdoor times to already scheduled outdoor times, like recess, like lunch breaks. So go out early for recess, or stay out after the recess bell rings for them to go back in. You're going to be outside for another 15, 20 minutes. Or however it goes like that, or before lunch break starts. They're already dressed, they're already ready. It's easier on you, and it's easier on them when they have to dress, undress, dress, undress. Adapt your activities to suit the winter weather. I often say, leave the writing for inside in the weather. You don't want those kids to take their mitts off and be cold. Always have those reflection times, whether you're in or whether you're out. In weather that is warmer, you can have them outside after the activity's finished. Always use a circle. Why not? Equity piece. Learn that their voice matters. They learn to speak to each other, and they learn to listen to each other. One very important circle is a knowledge building circle, and there's all kinds of information about that if you wish it. But basically, it's exploring a question together. It's not a debate, it's a conversation, it's a discourse between kids. And you can start with a question like, what surprised you most about being out there? Or if you went out to do this activity again, what would you do differently? Or what do you think you would advise other kids if they went outside to do this? Or what was the best part? And I love to say, the classroom really should be the office. And outside, you can do tons of field work. Students and their personal sustainability practices and responsibility. Woo. We spend time on this because kids are connecting to their place. They're young. They need to take in what you're telling them. It takes time. If they practice inside about those difficult conversations and they talk about them first, then when you're outside and they're cold and wet, they're going to know how it goes. So I put an example conversation there. A student might come up to you and say, I'm cold and I'm wet. And you might say, okay, what do you do when you feel like that? Now that's been a practice thing. So that student's going to respond with that rehearsed answer and tell you what they know they could do. And then you can say, great, go do it. And I'll check back with you in a bit and see how you're doing. There's some information about boots and hats and mitts, and suffice it to say that layers are extremely important. Adding mitts to glovies or gloves to mitts, and layers that they can add and take off as they need. When they're outside, ask them, did you choose the right clothes for today? How do you feel? Are you cold? Do you feel just right? Do you have a better choice at home that you could have made and that you would make again if we did the same kind of activity? And I love to say, educate your parents, invite them to some of these activities. And if they come, usually the first time they're not prepared either, but the second time they will be, particularly in winter. And that helps them to understand what their kids will be doing. There's lots of ways of literally getting started, but the best way is just to take a regular schoolyard or community walk and ask the question, what's going on out here today? Talk about the same, different. Hypothesize, why do you think that happened? Or why do you think that squirrel's here? And yesterday it wasn't. So there's big information here. There's a lot of critical thinking. And you can use that walk as the basis for further explorations and link everything to your curriculum in any or all subject areas. If you know your curriculum really well, you'll know what you can tap into, whether it's the architecture of a building that you're seeing for math, or cloud patterns to do some art, or poetry or language, and always connect it to how they feel about that. Naturalize your curriculum. I love that phrase, as opposed to synthesizing it indoors. And listen for their questions and pose questions, but resist giving answers. We do not need to be the font of all knowledge. Help them to find out. Instead of leading those debates and those discussion times, facilitate them and let the kids talk together. And notice those community issues. And maybe the question will come up, what could we do to help? There's a whack of, I'm gonna go back a bit here for a sec. Notice there's a book on the right called The Walking Curriculum. You can buy it at the Outdoor Learning Store, but it's got tons and tons of different walking trips you can take. But I've also added a whack here of different ways you can conduct a walk. So now my question is, who are you? I know you're an educator, but here's some transformative names for teacher that I love. And you can add to this list, but I would say, which one of these is attracting you right now? And which one of these could you see yourself getting to snuggle up to a little bit more? And would you add some others to this list? I love things like instigator or agitator. You can do these in wonderfully positive ways, and kids love it. And they learn that there's lots to learn. So what can you learn about in winter? Well, tons of things, and there's all the usual suspects. But I would say, you know, look at the last one down there. Ancient and current rituals. Well, tomorrow's Groundhog Day. It's also Chinese New Year. There's all kinds of things that are incited by the light and the dark parts of the year. Samhain, Diwali, All Saints Day, Groundhog Day. So there's lots of ways you can relate to this time of year. Social studies ways that make clear ancient times and now times. Love tamaracks, if you've got any in your neighborhood. I call them the great in between that deciduous and coniferous, because they lose their needles. You probably know that. And I love to call them a study in 50 Shades of Gray. They're just, you know, they break all the rules. It's so wonderful to read about and to look at and study the exceptions. So I'm going to show you a brief video, and it is some kids from last year who were taking a monthly trip of discovery to a local river. It was the first one they took. It was in November, and they were really interested in taking a closer look at water in their community, which is SDG number 6, clean water, because they had a proposed subdivision in their area. And they also had a proposed gravel pit, and they wanted to know how it would affect the water table and the water supply. And you can bet that came from their parents, right? So it's a community issue. And I wonder what subjects you could attach to all this. So I'd like you to take a look at and see how excited they are about this study.
The class was most interested in the goal life underwater. We read articles about local water issues, like gravel pits, and the houses they want to build in Bell Fountain. Then we went to the river to ask questions. People in Bell Fountain don't want a new subdivision to be built. The main idea is people don't want to have any more gravel pits. Why, if they dig so deep, why doesn't the water come out? Why do they build gravel pits? Why is water getting so polluted? The cool thing is that water just goes in like a V shape. It just comes down.
Comes down.
It's cool how there's like a big river and then there's a side river right there. I think that there's gonna be if we walk more down there, there's gonna be more side rivers.
Okay.
Is it just pollution that makes the water all dirty?
Why do you think?
Where do I stick pointing at? Okay, let me grab that. I think I'm oh yeah, do the way. Oh yeah, let me try. Wait, I can get this one. Right there. Yeah, you can get it. You can get it. Without stop.
Yeah?
I got it. I got the crayfish.
Colin, don't show me.
Oh, it's alive.
Oh.
Jeez. So what happened was we thought the crayfish were dead, so we rounded it up with a stick, and I reached my hand in there, and I tried grabbing it, and the crayfish bit me on the pinched me on the finger, and so yeah, that's what happened.
Did it hurt?
Yeah. These are like the claws. That's the head. I'm gonna sketch more on the body. These are the like legs, the swimmers. And these are like side parts that makes it help like swim. I kind of strange. It kind of looks weird. I don't know what is it. It feels kind of like a sponge.
Okay.
And it looks like a fish neck. It sounds so sort of regrowing in the river.
Wow. Look at that. I wonder what it is. Yeah.
Ooh, it's deer poop. It's deer poop.
Aha. You found poo. Well done.
Go on some squishy thing like this.
What did you find?
This thing.
What is it?
I don't know. Wait,
More.
wonder how long the river has been here for. Is there any more fish in the river other than crayfish?
Question.
Why does the river only go one way?
What do you mean?
How calmly it moves. Many animals live in it.
Good question.
Well, I kind of wonder what kind of stuff is in the river, like types of fish and stuff. I really like the view mostly. I like nature.
So you can see their excitement, and you can see that they're beginning to ask critical questions, and that water is a very big topic. And they could tie it and go just about anywhere to any curriculum with that topic. So lots of tips and tricks and ideas. As I said earlier, practice the slow release, build on each experience time-wise. Maybe 5 minutes the first time if your kids haven't been outside for learning. Kids can share with each other their best tips for the day as they go along. What do you think should happen? Don't require them to take their mitts off in the winter, as we said. My favorite, be positive, direct, but not a drill sergeant. It's all about keeping them on task and having fun with it. And ask them how they're doing, but never tell them how they feel. Start with that walk and asking questions and help them to dial into what's going on. It takes a while. The first time I take a class outside for learning, usually they say, nothing's happening out here. It's all wallpaper, right? So take it easy, it will happen. There's lots of things you can use like sit-upons or there's how to make them, waterproof things kids can sit on. Always use golf pencils if you're going to use pencils. They're little, they can fit in their pockets, clipboards, whiteboards, magnifying glasses, woo, big. So if it's a misty day, I say at the bottom, use mist as your teacher. Take a risk and deviate from your plan. It's very important. Not going to read that magnifying reading from Gathering Moss, but if you haven't read any of Robin Wall Kimmerer, I'm going to show you this book. Gathering Moss is a good one. Braiding Sweetgrass, awesome. It really helps you to dial in with connecting with the land and how important it is to tie ourselves to our planet. Outdoor locations to stimulate and generate math. Everybody always says, well, what do we do for math? Well, there's all kinds of activities. I've done an hour on taking math outside. So this is just a little snippet, but there's math to be had on your asphalt inside the chain link fence, as you can see in that photo. There's math to be had on your grass or your snowy schoolyard. There's math in your local and built and cultural communities, like in the graveyard, and math in your local green spaces, but math along the road too. So what math could you do in each of these places that satisfies your curriculum and what you need to do to connect? And exploring the arts. I'm probably taking too much time with this because it's my fave, but there's social comment art there. When COVID began, it was kids doing things to make a point. But you can do building of structures, as you know, sketching, writing winter songs, add a dance, writing plays about winter, connecting to creating winter games, dramatizing those moon of stories I suggested earlier, painting winter skies, the sky, the planets, the stars. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. So think all seasons for the arts. Think winter. What can you do? Can you paint your boot tread and create interesting patterns? Can you sculpt with snow? Can you do a stomp dance with their winter boots? That's really cool. Engaging with nature. When I teach older kids, sometimes their dance is a little more sophisticated and a little more nebulous. I'll ask them to create a dance on something like deforestation or pollution or biodiversity. Gets really interesting. To create a short art documentary outside is really neat. So it doesn't matter the age of the kids. And I've attached a link there to some drama strategies and conventions. So I'm going to do a really fast winter blast of ideas. It's a review. So let your mind wander. Think about your class and your grade and your subjects and what could it look like. There's making ice ornaments there. You can create that winter and animal Olympics. What amazing adaptations do animals have and how do they move in colder weather? Collect seeds early in winter and make seed balls for spring to feed the birds. Shoveling paths and mazes and creating games for that. Snowball targets, kids love to throw snowballs, inventing some games for it. Winter bubbles, there's a picture on the right. They behave differently in the winter if you haven't done it. Toss water in the frigid temperatures. What's up with that? Well, it's really cool. And animal track art outside, really cool. Investigate boot traction, which you see in that photo. Kids going uphill with their boots and deciding which boot track works the best and what's best for their value as if they're older kids. How can you connect math, art, science? All those opportunities are there. Hoarfrost on the right-hand side, absolutely a fantastic day for creative writing, etc. Lots of things outside, understanding different types of snow, how animals eat in the winter, what do they need? It's all connected to what you're doing. It looks differently for grade 1 than it does for grade 12, but it's all doable. Kids are more likely to see evidence of animals than they are the animals themselves. So teach them to see that evidence, the feathers you saw earlier, all kinds of things, animal scat. Here's some girls, one of my favorite pictures of winter, looking at the tracks on the other side of the fence where they haven't been disturbed. So connect to those, to your curriculum through action projects. Inquiry is amazing outside. Think all subjects, think community issues. Take those opportunities to connect with everything that you need to for your curriculum. Take it easy to begin with and move to more sophisticated things as you go along. Lots of things to be done on a 1-hour field trip, whether you have primary kids or junior or kids beyond that who are older. Documenting and assessing. Oh, wow, it's wonderful. Just make sure you include your kids on that, especially older kids. Here's an example of my grade 6 kids who decided on a field trip and decided what they were going to journal about. That journal page included math, science, language, art, dance, music, you name it. And they decided on the assessment criteria because they knew the curriculum as well. I put it into kid-friendly language so they can be involved. Here's another project where they created a geocaching project for themselves and parents to go on the weekends. Wow, it was a great project, and that was all out of grade 4. So why are we doing this? I think you know. I think we all know why it's so important, because kids will grow up with a sense of belonging to the land. They will feel and practice the reciprocity, the relationship, the sustainability we want them to have. We pass on ways of being that will nurture kids who will nurture the land and feel nurtured by the land. And remember, you can drag all of those SDGs. We can create those sustainably minded kids and adults by looking at all of those pieces of sustainability as we teach our curriculum. So get outside in winter, folks. It's a win-win-win. As you know, there's my favorite picture again. And lots of resources for rethinking. r4r.ca. You will find over 1,400 resources that are curriculum connected to every province and territory. They're free, they're downloadable, it's fantastic. Also, I would encourage you to check out Learning Inside Out. It was made for COVID times. It provides weekly email to your inbox, and it connects to curriculum inside and outside, both inside school and at home. And there's also a survey you can help with just by completing it for LSF, because we're busy creating empowering learners in a warming world and informing our kids about how they can deal with climate change. So thanks a lot, and I will stop sharing and we can have a chat if you'd like to stick around.
Wow, thanks so much, Pamela. I'm just going to kind of end the session so that we could stop the recording and those who'd like to leave could leave. Thank you very much. I love that idea of connecting to nature and land, because you can't ask the students to love the land or the planet if they don't get to know it. So by getting them out there and getting it to be a routine makes total sense.